All right, welcome back to Radio Wasteland, and our guests today are Tonya and Joey from Roommates from Beyond, or they are Roommates from Beyond. And how to live in a haunted house is one hell of a sales pitch, because I don't know, we all make this assumption, and I'm a horror movie fanatic. I watch this. Anybody who listens to this show is just, oh yeah, thanks for saying it again, Chance. But anytime I'm watching one of these things with somebody, people are just all, well, you know what I do, and you know what I do, and you know what I do. So it's interesting to have somebody on who we can ask, what did you do? So give us a little background into your getting started here and how you got here.
Sure. So I've been a lifelong experiencer. I grew up with a grandmother who was a psychic medium. And for me, even though I was experiencing for most of my life, it wasn't until I was in my 40s that I really began to realize that I was having experiences and encounters with spirits. I'll let Joey tell you a little bit about it. We had an experience in Point Pleasant, West Virginia that really opened the door for us to start to become really more interested in doing research. We were mentored by Rosemary Ellen Guiley for 10 years, and then that really opened the door for us to become paranormal investigators.
Right. And I grew up Roman Catholic, not appreciating just how kind of mystical and paranormal all of that is when you start breaking that religion down, right? From saints, miracles, everything, the transmogrification of the bread and wine, all of it. And when I was 16, I had a weird experience with a Ouija board. Two girls were playing with it. They got very sucked into a very classic trope of, oh, it's a little pioneer girl and she makes friends with them. But then there's a man who's chasing her who murdered her. But no, the one who's communicating the whole time is the man. They get so frightened, they stop coming to school. So they're at home in a basement, talk about horror movie, right? Trope.
Right.
And they're in the basement. And so we're all concerned. So my buddy Lou and I, a couple of Italian-American Roman Catholics at the Jersey Shore go, we're going to take care of this. This is going to end right now. So word gets around the school. There's like 25 kids in the basement, candles all around on the ledges in the basement. And the girls are frightened and everybody's getting, groupthink. And finally I go, if you're so bad, do something to us. Well, Chauncey, some of the candles go out.
Kind of asking for it with that one, huh?
Yeah, and I kind of felt my heart and the world stop for an instant. And then nothing until, we were 29 when we got together. Mm-hmm. And Tonya being a psychic medium, our daughter being a psychic medium, they're like batteries for this stuff. So, and we were passengers. And quite frankly, I hate being a passenger. I don't like it in my life. I want to know what's going on. So like I always say, the paranormal was investigating us. Well, hey, I'm going to drop what I'm doing. I'm going to investigate you right back. And the more you pay attention to it, the more so it becomes this feedback loop.
Right.
And then, we had a missing time. I don't want to go on and on at the top. But we had this missing time incident over 2 hours in Point Pleasant. Went there on vacation because of the Mothman Prophecies movie.
Right. Yeah.
To see the museum.
Right.
And that was 11 years ago. And we had a mind-bending experience that we just this year really found out what happened in that missing time. We're still processing it. And from there, it was all these investigators were interested in our experience.
Right.
And so, hey, we're hungry for knowledge. We're hosts of a show too. And some of the great fun is you get all this information coming in real time. Right. And so here we are now. Mm-hmm. Here we are.
So, Tonya, you said something that I thought was weird, and that was that you didn't really know until your 40s.
Mm-hmm.
So what did you think it was up until then? Did you just think you were a nut?
Yeah, well, I didn't think I was a nut, but when I was a child, anytime I had an experience, my dad is textbook cynic. If he can't see it, touch it, put it under a microscope, it doesn't exist. So although I was having all of these experiences, and although his mother was a psychic medium and was channeling through the Ouija board, through automatic, he didn't believe any of it. He thought his mother was a nut. So any experience that I had was immediately dismissed as my imagination. And I was always told, oh, you just have a vivid imagination, which I do. But at the same time, I was genuinely having these experiences. So when our daughter at around the age of 4 started saying that she was seeing spirits and hearing spirits, I believed her. I didn't, and Joey as well. So that's why it wasn't until I was in my 40s. It was actually after my level 3 Reiki attunement. And for those of your listeners who may not know, Reiki is a Japanese modality of energy balancing. And there's 3 levels that you can be trained and attuned in. And it was after my 3rd attunement that I actually began seeing spirit. I think that I had the ability to do it my whole life, but I had closed it off because I dismissed it as my imagination. So during Reiki sessions, spirit people would show up and they would tell me things, and I would dismiss it still as my imagination. And, I would argue with them and say, the first time it happened, a little indigenous woman showed up, and she was really excited about the work that I was doing, and she was clapping her hands, and I was working on my client, and she was saying, tell her to drink elderberry tea, tell her to drink elderberry tea. And I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure you're my imagination. I don't know anything about elderberry tea, and I'm not
they could be poisonous.
Yeah, I don't know anything about it. Right. So, and she stayed and she kept laughing at me and she kept saying, tell her to drink elderberry tea. So I'm having this whole debate with her. I finished the session, and at the end of a Reiki session, I'll leave my client on the table for a few minutes and just kind of let them relax and soak in the energy. And so I stepped out of the room. And of course, the first thing I did is I'm on my phone looking up elderberry tea, like, what is it? And, what is this? What's happening? And as it turned out, elderberry tea is wonderful for systemic inflammation, which is why the woman was coming to see me. It's a really beneficial herb. So I told my client afterward, hey, I don't know if you've ever looked into elderberry tea, but I don't know, you might want to look it up. So that began happening and people would show up. And over time, I began saying to my clients, all right, I'm just going to let you know that there was a woman here. Here's what she looked like. Here's what she was wearing. Here's what she said. And I would get this feedback from my clients, and they would say, oh my gosh, that's my mother. And this is the anniversary of her death. And I was so sad and thinking about her, or that was my brother or whatever. So it was over time that I got this feedback that I began to realize it wasn't my imagination.
And then, for you, Joey, have you, outside of, because the way she kind of describes it is that it started out as echoes or shadows, figuratively. And then as you get closer and more in tune with it, it becomes more in focus. For you, because that's always a question of mine to anybody who's psychic or medium. I don't really have experiences. And I'm wondering if this is something that people are born with or taught. Have you felt that you've learned to see it better, or are you just, have you learned to tune into it, or are you more able to see it when it's there? There's kind of 2 ways of saying this.
Right.
One would be, I know there's a candle there, so now I know there's a candle there. The other would be, I now perceive the candle that isn't there,
Right.
How did this go for you?
Right. It's a journey for me. I'm nowhere near, nor do I believe I will ever be anywhere near our daughter Jolie and Tonya, what they can do, or other mediums that we know. I have seen partial and darn near full-bodied apparitions in the past 2 years. I do seem to be developing clairaudience where I can hear them. The first time that happened to me was in the Webb Memorial Library that we researched for 2 years. That was really our training ground. I would have to say that although I do exercises to try to develop this, I'm not seeing a direct correlation. So my job is to look at the story, really collect the research, operate what small amount of electronic measuring equipment we use. I mostly it happens because it's there and I can see it. I can't say, now I'm going to try to tune in, talk to my dead aunt. No, but if my dead aunt happens to be in the area and she wants to communicate with me, then she does, and I'm better able to hear it. Does that make sense?
It does. It does.
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
Yeah. So that would lead me to believe that it's more a honing in of I know something may be there, so I'm going to squint a little more to see if it's there, and less that sort of born intuitiveness that I think a lot of people feel that they have.
Right.
Equipment has been a common topic. We had Eric Brumble on from ParaX Radio, and we were talking about equipment and how people choose equipment, because it's hard to take a piece of equipment that you don't know if it works, to find something that you don't know if it's there, and then have faith in that equipment that it's working. So what equipment do you use when you're doing this stuff, and why'd you choose it? Just because it's the standard, which is a totally acceptable answer, but what's yours?
Right. And of course, that's, yes, having mentors, and Rosemary Ellen Guiley sort of was a rock star in the field. Really, she still is.
Mm-hmm.
She passed a year and a half ago. She mentored us for 10 years. So the basics are a K2 meter, which you got to watch with a K2 meter, because electric boxes will set it off if your cell phone's too. I love on some of the shows where they're balancing the K2 meter on their cell phone, and they're like, look, it's going off. No, it's reading,
Right.
electronic. So K2 meter, a temperature gun, just a simple point and shoot laser temperature gun, because anywhere we've experienced up to a 13-degree drop and a 7-degree increase with no explanation at all. So sort of wisdom in the community is anywhere around 5 to 7 degrees, there could very well be presence, right? Because as they're trying to manifest, they're simply pulling energy from the air. And so there's a correlation there that's based in science. Then we do use the PSB11 spirit box. Again, it was recommended to us. Anyone who asked me, what spirit box should I get? I'm not a big fan of these. They look like 1930s radio, and they got cool digital stuff in them. No. I like the analog. I like the AM FM cycling through. PSB11 is nice because you keep the antenna completely off. You do get some radio, but a lot less than a homemade device, say, or an original Frank's box. I'm very, very skeptical, Chauncey, of the digital, because, okay, it's a word library and it's pulling, but where is it pulling? And some of them you add your own words to the dictionary. Well, any kind of algorithm is going to go, oh, if you added
I wasn't
a word,
really sure about that. I never really entirely knew what a spirit box was. Half of me thought, obviously you can see here I'm a musician, half of me thought that it was like an oscillator, like a old, like a synth, like a Moog or a Moog or whatever, where you're tuning in the oscillator. But then I'm just, well, how do they get words out of that? And so it's obviously some FM AM thing.
Yep.
And that all started to make sense. But then the digital ones, they're actually like I saw some woman on TV the other day who had a bunch of buttons in her living room, and she taught her dog to talk to her. And it's just all, mommy, love you, want to eat, and is that kind of how these digital things are set up, where they basically have options in there so they make it easy for the ghost in the digital realm?
That's how they're sold. And I am now, when did we load our first digital one on?
A little over a year ago.
Yeah, we had some colleagues that we met. We were on their show, and they're like, you really should try out some of these digitals. And Tanya seems to have much better luck with it. For me, it's almost random, where with the spirit box, you can tell when there's a voice and it's got an Irish accent and it's clearly a woman, and you say, hey, what are you seeing? And she says back, I don't know, what are you seeing? The chances of that being on NEW radio at that exact moment.
That makes sense. So the digital one sounds like Stephen Hawking or something, because it's loading. I see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
although that does have a nice creep factor, I'm sure.
Well, it does. It makes for great television. Right. There's one, I don't want to say the name of it because it's just not how it made, but there's one where it's all like, it sounds like scratch digital, like it's coming through an old timey radio, and the voices are super spooky. It's like we watch Paranormal Caught on Camera, and they overlay special effects and sounds on these people's videos. Well, you're really complicating my ability to take this seriously. You're a musician, the power of sound effects.
Absolutely. I mean, between digital and adding effects, you're creating massive amounts of sound artifacts, which could Yeah, absolutely.
Which are operating on you subconsciously. So I think that one is definitely out. And then we use a video recorder, and we use a digital audio that I can then put into Audacity or something like that.
Sure. Right.
Yeah,
right.
That's it. Everything else is paralysis by analysis.
I was just going to say with the digital ones, as Joey mentioned, sometimes I'm on the fence. Like I kind of lean more toward discounting them, but there have been several times where I'm doing an investigation or I'm seeing something and exactly what I'm seeing comes up through the digital app. So that's kind of hard. There was one time, it was a historic hotel in Ohio last year. Actually earlier this year. It's all blending together now with 2020. But I was walking into the lobby, and the ceiling of the lobby was painted with clouds. And I thought, oh, wow. And I looked up and saw it. And the moment I looked up and saw the clouds on the ceiling, the word clouds came through on the digital app. And then in the next section of that same lobby, there was an old wheel from a ship hanging from the ceiling. And as I looked at the wheel, the word wheel came up on the digital app. So, and there've been a few instances like that, but for the most part, like what Joey was saying, the words just seem to be completely random and have nothing to do with anything that's happening.
Yeah, and you can't help but to think that has something to do with time and logistics. That were those words coming from you? You're a person of this digital age. Were they coming from a spirit that experienced the digital age? It's hard to believe that a caveman ghost is going to be communicating through your digital box, but I guess it's hard to believe a lot of it. Obviously, we live in this world where we're trying to figure it out. But there might be some level of time and logistics to that.
Yeah.
Well, Kara and I were talking about this the other day, and that is that like we were talking about James Randi and him testing psychics, and how do you do that, and how do people go about testing psychics, and it comes to a point where they were doing large groups of people, and it makes you start to question, like, are we testing psychic ability? Are we testing global consciousness? I mean, the answer of something weird just happened here is not a scientific answer, and so it becomes a little loose as you're trying to figure that stuff out. So you guys collect all this stuff. So this leads me to my next question, and that is, how do you collect all this stuff? Is it all in your brain, or do you have some like obsession with Excel spreadsheets, or how do you like refer back and say, well, this reminds me of this, let's see how many times this has happened, or does any of that really go on, or
right,
is it really your own experience you're collecting?
As little as possible, although that's absolutely legitimate, and that's why the book is broken into 4 parts, and one of those 4 parts is our personal experiences, right? And I guess the third part too, as investigators. But I keep meticulous notes. That's how our first book, Watch Out for the Hallway, came to be. I keep a meticulous field journal. I'm writing a book that's called Parallels and Patterns, because that's how my brain thinks. So I'm a storyteller by trade. I'm a writer and actor, professional storyteller. And I always tell my stories from all points of view. So there's a central theme, and it looks like a wagon wheel. And that's how I approach this. So I like to triangulate data. Psychic mediums are great. Coupled with information, we got a temperature drop. Something's going on with the K2 meter. We got voices coming through the spirit box. We may get a digital something, an orb that isn't a dust particle because it changes direction or behaves in some kind of notable way. And research in history, because land has memory, homes have memory. There are possibly parallel dimensions. So I try to triangulate the data that way. And does it always happen? No. And then the other piece, where we spend a lot of our time legitimately, is looking for other cases that match. Because if we have it with that missing time, at one point our car went transparent. Now, if you say to someone, I'm driving in my car and suddenly it's transparent. I can watch the engine and the tranny and the drivetrain as we're going down Route 62. You go, hey, fella, you're nuts. You must have had an hallucination. But there are
Wonder Woman.
Yeah. And that's how I've explained it. I've said it's like Wonder Woman's plane.
Yeah.
And we found a case from the 1970s where this guy in Argentina, just a businessman, right? It's a blip. It's not even big in the lore. And I found it in a biography of John Keel. A beam of light hits his car from some kind of spaceship and the car goes transparent. Now, does that fully legitimize what happened to us? Heck no. Does it at least take a step towards, wow, okay, that's a very weird hallucination that two people 50 years and half a world away from each other both experience. So it's incumbent on us to take the anecdotal, break it all down, analyze it, and look for overlaps.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you both this, but I'm going to ask Tonya first. Speaking of the lore, do you, being a medium, you're more likely to, for one, consider it factual, because for Joey, a lot of this is anecdotal. But for you, you say, hey, I heard it. They're the words. I felt it. These are happening. It's much more factual. And so a much more potential spiritual side to that. Do you feel that the lore has helped? So like a lot of the shows that we do ends up being UFOs and aliens. Mm-hmm. And it's a good parallel because the UFOs and aliens has fractured down the middle. We have these nuts and bolts researchers. And then we have these like spiritual sort of yogis. I'm going to take you to the center of the pyramid in Mount Shasta people. And the lore kind of overlaps with the science. Do you find that the lore is helpful or hindering? And do you find that there's a lot of BS out there?
Wow. Just trying to think how I want to break down your question. It's a great question.
I'm a rambler.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I guess I'll start first from what you were saying in terms of, you're absolutely right when it comes to particularly things like cryptid researchers, UFO researchers. There do seem to be two camps, right?
Yeah.
Like just
Mothman is a prime example.
Yeah. So myself as an experiencer, not just a psychic medium, but I mentioned a lifelong experiencer, and this tends to be the case for people who experience, whether it be hauntings or UFO sightings, cryptid sightings, what have you. It kind of runs the gamut. Generally, if someone experiences haunting phenomenon, they've also experienced at least one of some other element of some kind of, episode of high strangeness. And that's kind of what Joey's looking for in his book, Parallels and Patterns. So it seems to be, to me, it's more like a continuum. And whatever it is, whether it's because we're a little more tuned in, because, whatever our energetic makeup is, nobody really knows. But for some reason, there are people who just tend to experience more of this strange phenomenon. And I think for those of us who have experienced it, the lore is helpful. Because as Joey mentioned, you can say, oh, wow, yeah, look at this. This guy had the exact same experience, and I've seen that across the board. I have seen UFOs. Joey's witnessed at least one with me. I've not yet seen a cryptid. I don't know. What we saw in Point Pleasant may or may not have been a cryptid. We're not sure. I want to see Bigfoot. Haven't seen him, but I have seen fairies. I've just had multiple, experiences. So when I'm able to read, whether it's in the UFO lore, Bigfoot research is interesting because, again, although I haven't seen Bigfoot, I read people's experience where maybe they saw Bigfoot and they went home, and then all of this kind of high strangeness was happening, like haunting phenomenon. And I have experienced a multitude of that. So now I'm kind of rambling. I feel like I hope that answered your question.
You have to address.
This is talk radio. Rambling is what is expected from the.
You have to answer the question about, do you think there's a lot of BS out there? Don't leave it all on me.
Do I think
because do you think there are a lot of not only BS, the people that believe they're BS, but is there a lot of people who don't believe they're BS? I guess that's a double-sided question as well.
So I guess when you say BS in terms of what people report, is that what you're asking?
No. As far as the leaders in the field, and I don't expect any names to be dropped here, but like, do you feel like that there are a lot of people that are pushing wishful thinking? And do you feel that there's a lot of people who are pushing lies?
Yeah, I think, in any field, whether it has anything to do with the paranormal or just nuts and bolts, anything, there's always going to be that. People are people, no matter what it is that they're doing. So yes, I think there's a lot of BS? Absolutely. But I think that happens in any field. Anytime you get a big bunch of people together doing one thing.
You really are rambling today.
I'm sorry.
And now for the harsh answer, I'm assuming, from Joey.
Oh, I guess. Yes, I guess so. Now that, I let Tonya lead and then I come in. My time is precious to me. And I take this work as seriously as I've taken working with kids and doing social justice issues and being an academic journal editor or any work that I've done in my life, I take seriously. Because I have a lot of interests and I have a huge list of what I want to accomplish. So I think that, I think there are lies because lies are good entertainment. We did a show yesterday and the interviewers were asking us about, do you feel like you're intruders, like when you go into a space? So we were talking about the 4 levels of haunting, right? Manifestation, infestation, oppression, possession. The money is that heavy infestation, oppression, and possession. That's good TV. And there's a lot of money in our industry. Tonya and I don't do TV. We're not good candidates for TV. We want to get into a situation and legitimately solve it as soon as possible. We're crisis managers. We're mediators. We're interveners. I don't want to see, we've witnessed to an attempted possession and a possession. And this is scary, horrific, terrible stuff that I don't want to make a dime on. And I don't want necessarily the public to see it for real because it's dangerous stuff. So I do think I try to get above duality. I always believe that there's a third path. So Bigfoot, flesh and blood, Bigfoot, interdimensional energy being. Yeah, because supposing where Bigfoot's from, he's maybe an energy being, comes through some kind of portal, manifests physically, and then becomes same thing with spaceships. Okay, right? I've really started. There's a lot of pushback in the community from going from UFO to UAP, unidentified aerial phenomena. But if you think of the sky worms, the orbs, some of the really crazy stuff that we're seeing, it's unidentified aerial phenomena. And as John Keel said in the 1970s, technically a flying saucer is not flying the way we understand flying. The air supporting the wings and the this and this. That is not what's going on here at all. So I'm looking for a third path. I'm looking for enough parallels and patterns because, Chauncey, we're on the fringe. This is fringe stuff. We're a long way from this being mainstream accepted stuff. And it works to the advantage of the people in government, people in society who don't have room for this in their worldview to go, they're kooks. And look, they can't even agree amongst themselves. And most of them are full of crap. And it works. And so we're trying to overcome that just by doing the work because we think it's important work and we have some skills for it.
Right.
Yeah.
In talking about that, you talked about possession and haunting. And this has been something that I find interesting. Most of my knowledge comes from horror films, but luckily horror films are fans of these things, My wife always is amazed at my ability to clear out a Jeopardy category on the Bible because of my biblical knowledge that solely comes from horror films.
That is awesome.
But I'm awesome. Oh yeah, I saw a movie about that. But in the case of possession and haunting, I'm always interested in spirits that were once alive versus demons or other kinds of entities. Now, in your description of possession, is that a spirit that was once alive taking a person, or do you believe that that is some sort of other entity? Because possession with another entity implies some sort of spiritual belief. Do you get where I'm going with this? You might have to formulate your own question out of this.
In the experiences that Joey was referencing, we don't feel that the entities we're not sure what they were, but we don't think that they were once humans. If that helps. We're not sure that they're demons.
I get what you're saying. I mean, they're just they're labels that we put on things we don't know, but
right.
Right. Like what is a demon? It depends on who you talk to.
Right.
I will say this, and we outlined it in the book, and I'm starting to get enough handle on it to go, okay, this is what I think the schema is. So we have ghosts. These were people who were once alive, now they're dead, but they're stuck here on Earth. They either don't know they're dead, they have an addiction that they're still getting a fix, there's something unresolved, they're scared of going into the light and going to the beyond. They're spirits. They have somehow made the journey, and they manifest differently. They can look young, vibrant. They can look whenever they want. They don't really have attachments here, but they're coming to either check in, do some good, but it's a different level of communication. Then what I call their non-human dark entities. That's sort of my workaround, right? Because being Catholic, you grow up with this idea of Lucifer and Satan and horned beings and winged angels. And I believe there are celestial light beings. Are they aliens? I don't know. That's the question we all are asking.
And if they are aliens, are they the ghosts of aliens?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It gets extra
we don't
weird.
know. Right. So that's sort of my workaround. Non-human dark entities. And they might be shadow people, Hat Man, Jinn, your Catholic demon, your Jewish Dybbuk, whatever. Right. It's cultural, Jinn or Middle Eastern. But I will say this, they feed on human energy. They feed on misery, fear, exhaustion, stress. That's their food. Whatever these creatures are, that's their food. We eat carbs and proteins, and they eat these dark energies. They're sharp. And a possession is like a all-you-can-eat buffet at the Golden Corral. It's the ultimate. In here. I've manipulated this being so much that I've actually gotten inside. That's my take on it right now. Is it right? I don't know, but I think I've made a good case for it. That's all I can say.
That makes sense. Like in that idea that there would be no motivation for a ghost to do that.
No.
That there has to be a motivation for something to go that far.
Right.
And the motivation is some sort of a feeding or life or continued existence, just like motivation for just about everything that we know of.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. Also, you talked about 4 levels of haunting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure I know what these 4 levels of haunting are. Maybe you could run into that a little further.
And apparently they're not well known. And I think they're important because it's a nice meter for a lot of things. When you talk about TV, you talk about where's the sweet spot, and in our work it's much lower. Raising the stakes, right, in story terms.
Sure.
So they actually were formulated to apply to possession, but you can use them easily for haunting. A manifestation is things are moving around in my house, doors are opening and closing, I see weird flashes of light, I think someone just called me an AH behind my back. Things are manifesting, right? Infestation is the point where it becomes almost an everyday thing. It's just, that's when the phone starts ringing for us, thankfully, because that's the goal. This is persistent. We're worried about going home. I no longer feel comfortable in my bed. This is happening all the time. I'm asking it to stop, and it's not. The knocks are getting louder. My kids are more worried. The next stage is oppression. Oppression is where these phenomena are starting to keep you up at night. They're starting to make you angry. You're missing work. Your family is arguing, and they don't even know why they're arguing. That happened to us in a house we lived in 2004. It's very Amityville.
Kind of the attitude that it's not going on around you, that it's going on to you.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Your phone's ringing in the middle of the night, so you can't get a sound sleep and nobody's there. That's typically where the TV shows go in, right? We are in crisis. We are in fear. Everybody's crying. They're upset. Well, you are just juicing a battery, and the goal of that battery is to get juiced. So you're really working against a good solution. And then possession. You're so broken down. Your energy field and your psyche. I try to parallel all of this as much with real life. So, like I said, I did a lot of work with high school kids, social justice. A high school bully who wants to control a girl will isolate her from her friends. He'll interrupt her patterns. He'll make her second guess everything she's seeing and hearing. Oh, of course they hate me. They don't want you to be free and make your own decision. And it's these mental games. And a non-human dark entity, that's the game. And I believe that the end is to break you down and get the maximum amount of energy from you. So that's why those 4 levels are, I think, really important to any discussion we have about this work.
That makes a lot of sense. And that does make sense on the sweet spot for TV. Part of that was saying that, getting the phone to ring, because this is part of what you guys do. So I guess that prompts the question of obviously your grasp of this stuff may be deeper than most, but admittedly by yourselves, it's pretty loose. So how do you help somebody who's having these problems?
So we'll start by just doing an initial interview, find out what's going on. Sometimes that's over the phone, Zoom. Sometimes we'll go to their home, but we'll usually spend about an hour, sometimes longer, just getting a history. What's going on? Have you had these experiences in the past? Just kind of, basic groundwork, finding out what's going on, not only in terms of paranormal activity, what's going on in their lives. Are they under a lot of stress? Did they recently move? Did they, just all of these questions. So we start with that. I don't like to know too much about the property. Let's say somebody's having a haunting experience in their home, whether it's their home or a business. Either way, I don't like to know too much about the property itself until I go there, because I don't want my analytical mind filling in the blanks. I want to be picking up intuitively what I'm picking up. So I'll do a walkthrough. I'll see what I'm seeing. And then after we've kind of initially gone there, done some initial groundwork with the interview, walkthrough, then we'll do some research. Maybe the client already knows about the history of their home. Maybe they don't. So then we'll go do some historic research and see what we can find out. We'll do internet searches, newspaper searches, that type of thing.
Property deeds.
Yeah. Find out what
microfiche.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then
the digital age really helps with a lot of this. Find a grave and all that, but go ahead.
Right. And then we just kind of put all of the information together. Of course, we pull the equipment out, do an investigation with the equipment, use that to corroborate anything that I'm picking up. And then depending on what we get, oftentimes I'm seeing the spirit that, that's there. And I'll work with, I say spirit, but generally it's a ghost. A ghost being an earthbound, person. And I'll work with them to either try to cross them over, which oftentimes works, or just come to some sort of, agreement between the living residents and the deceased residents.
So it's kind of like ghost counseling.
Yeah, exactly. As Joey said, mediating. Yeah. Hey, this person isn't ready to cross over. This was their house for many, many years. They're attached to it. They don't want to leave. Can you just acknowledge, hey, when you're sensing them, just say, hey, Frank, how are you? And leave it at that. And some people are okay with that. Some people aren't. But for the most part, that's generally what we do. A lot of it has to do with just trying to help families. Generally, activity will start to escalate when families are in some sort of crisis situation. They're going through a really stressful life change or something to that effect that's really putting that kind of energy into their environment that's causing this phenomenon to escalate. So we're trying to help as someone who I'm also a registered yoga teacher. I'm a certified hypnotist, massage therapist, Reiki Master. So I take all of these things and try to help the clients, and we talk about energy. How are you taking care of your energy body? How are you taking care of your physical body?
I see. How often do you, well, my note here says, how often do you debunk it? But I guess my question is, how often do you come into a situation and basically say, no, you just need a new water heater or something like that? Does that happen?
It happens.
Just happened
It happens
yesterday.
quite regularly through email, digital photos. Not too often. We're careful with our time. That's why the intake interview is great. Try this, this, and this, and if it doesn't work, yes, we'll drive the 2 hours. Well, we take no pay for what we do. That's just how we were taught and what the schools. Although I believe that we're paid in data and story, so that's what I should say.
Yeah, of course, you utilize that to turn into the things, but yeah,
right, but no financial fee. So obviously you don't want to drive 2 hours for nothing. So we do quite a bit of that. We had something really compelling yesterday. It was a security camera on someone's back porch, and at 10:36, 10:38, 2 out of 3 days, there's this shaft of purple light that comes. It looks like it comes out of the woods, comes onto the porch, and in one of the pictures, it almost looks like the vague shape of a human. And so it looks on one level, wow, compelling and purple. Maybe that's angel light, and maybe there's a celestial being manifesting on her back porch. But we reached out to a colleague, which we always do, and said, hey, what do you think of this? And he said, because it's that time of day and the angle, I think that the light is refracting off the security camera lens and causing this. I'm 99% sure. So Tonya then goes into the phone consultation saying, it could very well be this. Is there anything else going on? No. Then probably that's what it is. And
try a blinder. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Do an experiment. And I wasn't smart enough to know. I'm going, I don't see like a crystal dangling. I don't see like any kind of glass in the shot. Not thinking, the lens of the security camera, that's where my technical know-how fell short. So that's why you ask colleagues.
And for me, a lot of times, like if I look at a picture, I'll psychically get an impression of the ghost of somebody, maybe. Mm-hmm. And we're seeing what looked like the shape of a person, but I wasn't getting anything. I was getting no sense of any kind of intelligent anything. To me, it just felt like light. So that was why it was really good to have our friend who's a sort of a camera expert to say, no, I think that's what this is. So that was, another way to look at it and say to her, I'm not getting anything. What's going on in your house, if anything?
Right. And just one thing to tag on that. We need to be our own best debunkers. That's how you build legitimacy. That's how you build trust. That's how you keep the trolls away, which, knock on wood, we've been really good at that. We are our own debunkers. So I do over-enthusiasts, skeptics, cynics. Cynics, you could show them all the data. They'll never believe it. It's just not in their worldview. Skeptics, we're skeptics. We have to be skeptics. Or there's over-enthusiasts where every knock, every light, and over-enthusiasts are as bad for the work as cynics are. Right. Because if everything's paranormal, man, nothing's paranormal. So just stop right there. So, but anyway.
That makes sense. I'm not Christian. I was raised Catholic, but not much of anything right now. But one of my favorite books is the Screwtape Letters. And in the Screwtape Letters, Screwtape is talking about how it's easier to corrupt an overly enthused Christian than it is somebody who doesn't believe at all.
Yeah.
And, obviously he's instructing Wormwood how to, corrupt these parishioners because they have this belief that they're going to be willing to go in and take pride in and all this stuff. Great book for the audience if you haven't read it, but that makes sense that the damage could come from inside because, like we were talking earlier about the BS and stuff like that, people maybe get too invested. I think that's kind of what's going on in the UFO community is they're just all, well, these aliens keep coming to me. There must be something special about me or my situation. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, one of Jacques Vallée's best books is Messengers of Deception. And that's exactly what it is. These UFO cults are not putting the field forward. at all.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't let you out of here without asking you straight up. How does one live in a haunted home? I mean, you guys had this experience that.
Oh yeah, in many of our homes, I think we report on half a dozen homes, and we find it value added as long as it's not dangerous. But we do acknowledge in the book that it all depends on your personal threshold. And we know lots of people who, oh yeah, we got these ghosts and they're great, and sometimes they join us for coffee, and I love these lights, and I have fairy lights and these little creatures running around my house, and I love it. Some people are like, I'm seeing a disembodied face and I want it out of my home immediately. I don't care who it is. Now, for us, we need that data. They don't care. I don't want to know who it is. I don't know what it is. I want it out of my home. So for us, I don't know. You're a musician, so living in a music studio is cool. So
yeah, I guess so.
For people, yeah, and wherever we go, it's there. So we have to deal with it. Would you disagree or agree or?
No, I totally agree. I think it really just depends on the person, their level of comfort. Some people are completely freaked out just by the idea. It doesn't matter who it is. It could be their most beloved aunt. They don't care.
Yeah, right. Want her out.
Right. That's funny.
And some
my mother-in-law. Right.
Yeah.
Oh, hey.
And we've had that experience.
My mother. We talk about it in the book. So just real quick, and I don't know how much time we have left, but my mother-in-law died a little more than 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. And so my father-in-law came, he lived about a block and a half from us. He didn't want to be alone. And so we got him a little house down the street, and we're super busy people, and he doesn't always agree with everything we do. And so anyway, but we were not having him over the house enough for dinner, apparently, according to my mother-in-law. So Chelsea, all I can tell you is this happened, and I don't have an explanation. I would open up the silverware drawer, and I would find pieces of my father-in-law's silver in our silverware drawer. That's all I can tell you. So if somebody was Zooming me on this plane, they have not fessed to it. So it seemed like a clear message. She was somehow apparating his silver, and we would send it back, and it would come back.
Well, the other thing she was doing is my phone. Like, I watch this happen on numerous, and could it be the technology malfunctioning? Absolutely. But on numerous occasions, I was holding my phone, just looking at it, like checking the time or something like that. And it would literally dial my father in my hand while I was looking at it. So apparently I wasn't calling him enough.
Or you were talking to Daniel that time about moving your dad to another.
No, it wasn't that. Okay. I was going to call. So my father wanted to move to Cincinnati area. His brother's over there. And I was looking at different options to try and help him find a place. And one place was not assisted living, but I guess the closest thing to compare it to would be assisted living. But something a little like a step down, I guess.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
so it was an apartment, and it had some benefits in terms of people come do your laundry, that type of thing. So I wanted to call. Apparently my mother wasn't having it. So I tried the number. It's malfunctioning. I can't get through. Finally, the phone starts ringing at the apartment complex, and then the woman answers, and as I'm talking to her, and I've never had this happen before or since, my phone dials my son at the same time. And I knew, so my son and my dad are very close, and I knew that was my mother's way of saying, no, he can't go live there. He needs to go live by Daniel. So,
and the implication is you're going to bed at night, and your mother-in-law's hanging around, and it's like, Ma, like, you gotta go away. So
yeah, stereotypically though, as far as the joke is concerned, that's about the most agreeable dead mother-in-law that's out there. The joke would be that they would be making your life a holy hell, but here she's actually helping out. So, count your blessings on that one.
Yeah. Well put.
Okay, so for my last question, this is the horror movie nut in me. I'm going to ask you both, but it might be the same answer, so you can tell me ahead of time. What's the scariest thing that's ever happened to you doing this?
Oh, well, there's so many to choose from, but for me, I think it was our first few times in the Webb Library in North Carolina.
why don't you tell us what the web library is real quick?
Yes, I definitely will. So in Morehead City, North Carolina, there is a library. It was built in 1929, and Joey and I had the opportunity to investigate the library for 2 years. And we wrote a book called Watch Out for the Hallway, our 2-year investigation of the most haunted library in North Carolina. And it really is an incredibly haunted building. And it's very different. There's very different energies on the first floor and the second floor. So the first floor, for the most part, we would encounter very friendly ghosts. We talk about people like Dr. Thompson, who was one of the original doctors when the building first opened in 1929. There are children down there. And just really fun experiences that we would have on the first floor. But then you go up to the second floor, and immediately, like as you're going up the stairs, you feel, and people would comment on this all the time, you would feel the energy literally getting thicker, denser, heavier. You get up to the second floor, and it's just a totally different experience. And one of the spirits that we encountered up there, and there were several, just very unsettling, scary ones, was this. My daughter saw it differently than I did. She saw it as, she described it as a wraith, sort of like this bony thing crawling along the ceiling with its head flipped backwards.
And 3 or 4 other people saw it too.
Yeah. And she could, we could both hear the sort of like clicking of the bones as it moved across the ceiling. But what I was seeing was slightly different. I was seeing a very thin, gaunt old woman crawling across the ceiling. Again, her head was flipped backwards, and she was kind of crawling like in a spider-like fashion. So that's probably one of the scariest things, I think, for me.
I got to tell you, that is... and I'm not belittling the experience. I'm making the associations to a traumatizing movie that I've seen. There is a scene in The Exorcist 3 where George C. Scott is at the mental institution, and he's talking to the woman in a old woman in a hospital gown climbs across the ceiling, and it traumatized me. So that story worked.
Yeah. Mine, hands down, is the attempted possession. Watching over the course of an hour, this woman, a colleague, a friend of ours, was having activity in her house, invited us for the weekend. And she was acting real weird. She was talking about throwing cement blocks through the windshields of the passing cars because they're too loud. And Tanya and I were like, this is not our friend, right? And she had a few glasses of wine or whatnot. And that night, just casual, we were going to start the investigation the next day. We got in late at night. And then all of a sudden, she wanted to use dowsing rods, which is another tool, actually, that we use. It's great because it's just yes, no answers. So it takes a lot of complication out of it. And I said, no, you've been drinking. It's late at night. We'll do the dowsing rods tomorrow. So I go to a little place where I set up to do my work. I take a lot of work with me. And I turned around, and she's right behind me holding the dowsing rods. And I said, look, so-and-so, we got to put these away. You got to go to bed. So Tanya goes upstairs to her bedroom. She's on the couch. I'm working in the next room. She starts cackling. Like, I'm hearing this cackling. It sounds like an old crone, like from a horror movie.
Right.
And I go over. I saw her eyes starting to change color. I heard 2 different voices. I heard this cackling woman saying intelligible things, and then this woman's voice would break in. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will feel no evil. Please know, our Father who art in heaven, and going back and forth. And this went for an hour, and that the hackles and everything are coming up right now. Mm-hmm. That hands down was the scariest thing, especially when the eyes change color.
So I got to say, both of those things are terrifying. So here's my parallel story. I moved to Ashland, Oregon, and became familiar with the term charcuterie, which everybody else seemed to know but me. And I decided, hey, I'm gonna make some salami and sausages in the garage. And my wife's just all, no. So she buys me a food dehydrator, says, get started with jerky. And I realize this is a loose comparison, but it's going somewhere. And so I make jerky, and I give myself terrible, terrible food poisoning. to the point where I
No.
think I'm going to die on the toilet. I think my family is going to find me on the floor of the bathroom. I think it's terrible. I think I'm going to die.
Oh no.
And so I'm telling Kara this story, and I'm just all, yeah, but next time I'll do it better. And Kara's just all, you're going to do it again? And I'm just all, yeah, what do you expect me to quit just because I messed up the first time? And she's all, I would. And so, you know, these scary, I mean, both of your stories were absolutely terrifying, but they must have inspired you on some level because, as you were saying earlier about the person who wants their beloved aunt's face out of their house, you know, something kept you going back, you know. So obviously it wasn't so terrifying that you're all, that's it, we're out.
No, that night we prevented that possession. That's probably in you see what I'm saying? It could very well be that our presence there and the prayers and the things we took out and the work that we did kept this woman from being fully possessed. And it never happened again. And then,
but the bony spider lady, I mean, she's going to be there the next time you go up there, possibly.
She didn't hurt us, though. She didn't hurt us, right?
Yeah, my interest in that, and it was completely freaky. But what fascinated me about it was that my daughter and I, although what we were perceiving was similar, it was different. And so what fascinates me about that is how are we picking up these energetic signals? What filter are they going through in our, you know, mind's eye, that this is what I'm seeing and this is what she's seeing. And I don't think either one of us is wrong. And it's, you know, makes me wonder, do these intelligent entities, do they have a way to project different things into different people's perception? I did have another experience in the same library where I saw a clown. I don't like clowns. I hate clowns. And there was a clown strolling down the hallway, and he just turned and grinned at me and continued strolling on down the hallway. And I was like, no, no, no. Did that intelligent entity pick that, you know, image because they knew that I'm afraid of clowns, you know? So these are things I would like to discover and learn more about. We really don't know how psychic perception works.
Right.
But it's fascinating to collect the information and compare notes. And
clowns, it turns out, I think, is a universal fear. You know, here's my movie nerd factoid that I'll huck at you. If you saw Star Wars: The Phantom Menace and saw Darth Maul, right, when they were trying to figure out how to make Darth Maul look, you know, they had all the people in there trying to decide how they're going to look, and George Lucas said, I want you guys to all bring something in that terrified you when you were a child. And they ended up basing it off of one guy who brought in a picture of Bozo the Clown. And that's actually why Darth Maul is all kind of clowny looking, is because of this guy's terror of Bozo the Clown.
Wow. That's interesting, because I think the creature from The Further in the Insidious movies.
Oh, yeah, that thing was great.
But he also looks like Darth Maul a little.
Totally.
So that's cool. That's very cool.
And I loved the idea of that movie, the idea that you could astral project but go too far. I found the concept very inspiring to my imagination, you know. Yeah, I love it.
You know what? I'm an astral traveler, and you worry about that silver thread snapping. Right. And again, it's something I do, you know, in semi-consciousness or in lucid dreaming.
It was something I had never even heard of until this movie, but that was something that people actually are concerned about, huh?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, people will say, I think I'm astral traveling. Like, how does this work? And will I never come back? And the lure, the symbolism is this silver thread from your navel that connects you to your body. And as long as your ethereal body stays connected, you'll come back. And there's been a few times that I've sort of woken up or something wasn't right, and I've snapped back like it's a rubber band, like it actually has physical properties.
Right. That
thread.
Dr. Sleep kind of dealt with that a little bit. Yeah. And then, of course, I'm a big fan of Lovecraft, and the dream cycle in The White Ship kind of has a lot of ties into that sort of stuff. But okay, so where is the best place for people to find your book? I see that it's here on Amazon, and you guys separately have quite a few books, but together it looks like Roommates from Beyond and Watch Out for the Hallway. Those are the two that you've written together, right?
Right.
Correct.
That's correct. And that's the best place to get them is on Amazon. That'd be great.
Mm-hmm.
And where's the best place for people to find out more about you and possibly contact you and learn more about you?
Sure. So Joey and I are both on Facebook. So you can find Joey at Joey Madia on Facebook. And my Facebook page is Tonya Madia Medium. And then together you can find us on our Into the Outer Realms page. And that's a page for the show that we do every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Right. And that's where we report on our investigations and all. So that's a great place for people to follow us, keep up with what's going on. And they can instant message us there if they need advice.
Sounds good. Well, we will make sure that we get those links up on our websites. You've been listening to Joey and Tonya Madia. And thank you, guys. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you. We agree.
Yeah. And we hope to have you on sometime. So maybe next time you guys got a great investigation and want to talk about it, we'd love to have you come tell us about it.
Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate it. As soon as things open back up, we got to get back on the road.
Right. Yeah. All right. You've been listening to Radio Wasteland. Thanks for checking us out.
Welcome to the